All right, so we are here with Jeff Alquist, and Jeff, man, I think the people need you, bro. We need you to give them some heat. So if you could tell them a little bit about your, we started working together in August of 22. Is that correct?
That's right. It's been about a year.
Okay, and before that, so I know when we first weighed you in, you were like 257, and then earlier that year, January or December of 21. You were kind of getting close to 300, right? You weren't on the scale, somewhere around there?
Yeah, I weighed in for sure at 280 something, but I know I've been over 300.
Okay. So from December 21, you were, because you didn't weigh in December, so you're pretty sure you got over 290 at least, right?
Yeah.
So December of 21, you were over 290, possibly 300. And then...
You know, when you weigh that much, you don't want to weigh in every day.
Yeah. And then, you started buckling down. And what were you doing before August? What were you doing to get down to that 257?
I was actually counting calories. That was the number one thing that worked for me.
Okay.
I had an app and I'd count calories.
And were you doing mostly the shakes, or were you doing food or packaged foods? What were you doing?
At the time, I was doing a lot of shakes.
Okay.
In retrospect, I don't know what I think about that, but it was easy. And for me, the black and white thinking kind of made that easy.
No, absolutely. I mean, so kind of the medical weight loss shakes, right? Is that what they are? Yeah. And then, okay. But if you don't mind sharing a little bit about your history, you look a lot younger, but how old are you, if you don't mind sharing for the people?
54.
54 years old, young, as they say now.
I don't feel 54.
Okay.
I'm 54.
All right. So 54, and you actually were not small, even going back as high school, right?
Yeah, I was overweight my entire life. I remember my junior year in high school, I lost weight. I mean, when I was younger in middle school, I needed to lose weight, and I got down pretty well, and I was looking pretty good in the pictures. I looked really good.
Yeah, that's middle school?
Actually, my junior year in high school.
In high school, okay, yeah.
I lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And I remember that. And then in senior year, life got super stressful, and I started gaining weight. Then college, and I remember about 20 years ago, I hit 375 pounds.
375 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, so is it fair to say that your adult life, would you say you're a classic yo-yo dieter?
Oh yeah. I would.
Like, what's the cycle? Take us through over the last, say 30 years. What's the cycle of weight loss and weight gain for you? What's it look like?
So I would have many, many times where I'd start losing weight for whatever reason. I remember back in college.
Well, it's not whatever reason. Wouldn't you get sick of it? Wouldn't you just reach a point where you're like, okay, enough is enough, and I can't be any heavier? Like, wasn't there a point where you would just be like, okay, this is my limit, right? And you would just you just buckle down and finally be like, okay, I gotta lose the weight. Does that sound right?
I was single and really lonely, and I wanted to date, and that was a big motivation for losing weight.
And now you got a whole roster. You got applications, right? So it's kind of like now you filter through. Yeah. Okay.
But as I got older, it became about the health. You know, when you're over 300 pounds, my body was telling me this is not right. And
come on, don't lie to us. Not never about the health. Anyways, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm just kidding.
But it really did, and it got more and more, and it was more and more disconcerting. And it wasn't, the joints were always an issue that would motivate me to lose weight.
Yeah. But
as I got older, I could just tell, and it's hard to explain it, but it's like I just don't feel right. And I went to the doctor.
Okay, but how would that cycle go? Like every 3-4 years, you would drop like 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds sometimes, right? Is that how it would work? Or every 2 years, every 5 years? How would that cycle, like on average, look?
I would decide enough is enough, and for whatever reason, and I'd get on a diet.
Get on the medical weight loss diet usually, right?
Yeah, and it was always, I remember the ones that worked were the incredibly strict ones.
Right.
Like for a while it was like, no matter what, I'm not going over the Weight Watchers points, or no matter what, I'm not going over my calories.
Right.
Or, da-da-da-da-da. And the thing is, those were the only ones that ever worked for more than a week.
Yeah.
The problem is, after several months, I'd lose weight, and then they'd stop working, and I'd just spring right back to.
So was it they would stop working, or it would just become like you'd get tired of it, realistically, right? At a certain point, wouldn't it get just like tiring?
I'd get tired of it and frustrated, and I'd want to go off the diet for whatever reason. And then it's like, well, I've broken this perfect streak of dieting for 6 months.
Once you break it, once you get outside that perfect, pristine system, all bets are off, right?
That was the biggest problem I had,
Yeah.
is that once I broke it, I would just start eating like crazy, and then I'd eat for a day, then a weekend, then a month, and then by the time I knew it, I'd gained all the weight back.
Okay. And tell us about your strategy. So with that sort of severe dieting, there wasn't room for a ton of exercise. Am I correct?
Right. I never exercised regularly until I started working with Yusuf.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But I mean, even at Clackfit, we had our off and ons, right? So basically for going years back, well, that's probably what, eight years ago, 10, when we started working together, you would still have your ups and downs, but the difference would be you'd be a little bit stronger, but your weight would go up and down depending on the diet, right?
Yeah, it was mostly the diet. I noticed too that when I was over about 220, I could lose weight super easily without exercising.
Yeah.
And then I noticed it got harder.
Okay, so, but when you lost weight in the past, you would get down, like when you had a successful diet, you would get down to like 240, maybe 230. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That'd be, and that's most times not with much muscle at all. This is just dieting down and just losing some weight, but you probably were losing a lot of lean tissue as well. Is that right?
I would assume so.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're able to get smaller, but this time we're going, let's break down what's actually been happening with you now. So you weighed in the other day. Okay, so you started with me at 257. You weighed in the other day at 193, which is freaking crazy.
Yep.
But different this time is we've been working together carefully in the gym and tracking your numbers, and all your strength output, all your workouts are just going up, workout after workout. Right, so the output, and you can see it in your body, right, in your arms and in your legs. In fact, didn't you get a compliment, true or false? A stranger, unsolicited, not a stranger, somebody that you know in your dance class, unsolicited, said, "You're looking, Jeff, you're looking ruggedly handsome."
Yes, I got that exact word, was ruggedly handsome.
So that's the difference between, weight loss dieting, medical weight loss, and lifting along with the nutrition strategy. Is that is it fair to say that it's starting to seep into your identity more? You're starting to see yourself as a person who lifts and is physical than just somebody who gets fat and needs to diet every couple of years?
It definitely is. I notice, like, when I get stressed out, more often than not, I can't eat, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can't, because that's not good for me. But I go out and I'll go for a walk or a bike ride, and that's kind of cool. The joints feel a lot better, obviously, from losing the weight. But I was cleaning my place up, and there was a lot of moving around in boxes and all that, and just the physicality was so much easier, and I was so much stronger. Just after working out with you this year, it was remarkable how my back didn't hurt like it did, and just I had a lot more strength, and it felt kind of good.
So there's a lot of like details that people are probably curious about, like your daily activity and all that, and that's probably for another time. But what I'd love to hear is quality of life upgrades. Like, so for example, one thing I hear from people that are over 300 pounds is just every time you move or roll to your side or sit down, isn't it a reminder of just how big you are and how far you've kind of let yourself go? Is that fair to say?
Me when I was overweight?
Yeah, like when you're weighing, isn't one of the punishments of being 300 pounds just kind of everything you do is kind of like talking to you? Like when you move to your side, you lay down, you get up, it's just there, right? Your stomach's there.
I remember taking a shower, I would get out of breath.
Wow.
Just, because moving around and bending over and picking stuff up, just, pulling the towel off the floor, the kind of stuff when I was that big, and sweating. That was, I would sweat all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of embarrassing.
What about, and I know this is personal, but I think the more raw it is, the more helpful for people. I've had this in myself, I've had big stomach and love handles and stuff, but just sometimes when you just look down and you notice how big it's gotten, or like when you're trying to move around and you realize it's just it's unwieldy or awkward, and then you're like, do you ever have that thought, like, my God, I'm big, how did I let myself get this far? You ever had that thought, like in the past?
I remember one time when I was closer to 375.
Yeah.
I was at work and we were going out for lunch, and we walked into the elevator lobby, and it had the metallic glass walls, and I saw a reflection of myself, and it was enormous.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time I'd ever seen myself that big. I guess part of it, you just ignore yourself. I mean, how do you get that heavy? Is that you just ignore it,
you just
right?
pretend, yeah.
And then I saw myself in the mirror, and it was shocking how big I was.
And so that, and that can't make you feel good.
No, and it was very difficult to see that. And it was I guess what denial is kind of part of how you can get that heavy, and
Right.
seeing that, it was like, no, that was pretty shocking.
So this time around, one thing that just I was really motivated to do. We had no idea if we are going to be successful, but I knew that, like, because I'd already worked with you in the past, I already know you can lift weights. You can do a routine, but the difference was, I didn't want you to go. I wanted to get you off this yo-yo, and I wanted you to get off this yo-yo and make this part of you, not something that you just kind of show up to and I beat you up or what have you. That this is something that is coming from yourself, and you're changing as a person. Can you talk about to what degree you've kind of been feeling that transition, and not to say that you're there or where you want to be or what have you, but have you felt an internal change, and if so, to what extent?
The first thing that comes to mind is that I've fallen off the diet a few times, like I always do, like I did in the past ones.
Yeah.
But within like a week at the most, I'd get right back on it.
Okay.
And honestly, it's support that kind of keeps an accountability that's helping me do that. But I've noticed that more often than not, even at the end of the day, I have that thing. Well, it didn't go so good, but you know what? I'm done. I'm not going to go crazy. And so that's been a neat internal transition.
What about, like, because you're active daily, so what about, like, more in spiritual terms or as a person, character, anything like that, where you feel that in your core values, and again, if the answer is no, I'm not trying to like bait you or anything, but is there anything that within you at your core where you just feel that this is more integrated into you at a deeper level, and not this external thing that you're just waiting to get rug pulled, that like I'm sure at certain times in the past you knew that eventually the diet was just going to fade away and you were going to go back to where you were, right? So talk about that. Anything internal that you feel like you've been able to change over this last 6 months to a year, where you have hope that this is something different, something deeper?
Actually, yeah. So when I was losing weight, you had talked quite a bit about, you're becoming this athletic person, you're becoming a different person, and that, that's pretty obvious and that makes a lot of sense. But the other day there was something I didn't want to do. I remember thinking this very clearly. It's like, and I was going to either put it off or procrastinate. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not the person I am, And just like the physical stuff, I'm no longer that overweight person who can't do these exercises and da-da-da-da-da. It actually translated into, it's like, no, I'm not the kind of person who's going to let that go.
Awesome.
And so that was pretty cool. And so it's more than just a physical.
And to be clear, there's no like demarcation to where like, oh, I arrived here. It's more of embracing a daily process, just reminders of like, oh, getting back in my process. You're reminding me who I am, right? It's not like something clicked, like some switch just flipped and you're like, oh, I graduated into this new enlightened being. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the other neat thing is, every once in a while I have this feeling of badassitude. I'd exercise or work out or dance, I'd feel kind of ridiculous before.
Yeah.
Now I feel legitimate.
So you were dancing in a ballroom dance full of ladies and you were having trouble feeling like a badass. Tell me more about that.
I've been dancing for 5 years,
Yeah.
and I could never watch myself in
Yeah.
the videos.
Right.
Because again, I'd see oh my God, look how big I am.
Yeah.
And the ladies, they always liked dancing with me, but I was always so insecure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't take myself seriously, and I kind of joke around.
Yeah.
And
that's been huge. You're not using the self-effacing humor as much as you were in the past, right?
yeah, now I take
Yeah.
myself more seriously.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of feeling. It's
Yeah.
subtle. I'm not somber and serious, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a legitimate player just showing up to dance.
And I noticed it in the pictures, just your facial expression, his pictures, you could just see it. If we go back through the photos, you can just see the transformation. It's funny how that happens. You can see that on people's faces. I can see it on my own. But man, we're coming up on 15 minutes. Thank you for being generous and sharing. These insights are personal. A lot of people, I understand, don't want to share, but I think we had to get it out there because there's a lot of people that are in your situation or similar, and I think we can all use these messages of hope and just realizing that, wouldn't you say it's never too late?
Oh no, I am surprised how the amount of physicality I have right now
Yeah.
compared to where, not just because of the weight loss, just the strength in general.
All right. There you go, guys. You heard it from the man, Jeff Alquist.